Hi, I'm Carmen Alana Tibbetts. Welcome to the Agosia Art Studio. Today I'm joined by my body double Pearl, who is wearing a tunic that I recently finished. This piece of clothing was inspired by a jacket that is worn by a rabbit figure that I also recently finished. And I liked it so much that I wanted to make something similar for myself. So today I'm going to talk about the process that I had to go through to change some of the techniques to make them appropriate for human-sized and wearable clothing. Let's get started. Let's start by taking a look at the original rabbit tunic and seeing the things that I liked about it. Now, I had to piece the linen for this tunic because I didn't have enough to make the jacket from one piece of fabric. And I used a variety of natural toned fabrics. They're all of a similar weight, and there's a couple different weaves here which may be difficult to see. And then I highlighted all of those seams with little rows of bone color beads, just here and there throughout the jacket. Not every seam, just enough to kind of give it a little bit of visual interest. And then I used some larger beads to provide kind of a faux button look here. Now, I lined the inside of this jacket with silk, so the seams for the piecing of the linen don't show. So I wanted to try something like this for myself. But the big concern was what to do with all of those seams that I would have. So I knew that the first thing that I would have to do is try and test some fabrics to see what was going to happen to them in the wash. So we'll move this guy out of the way and take a look at my first sample. So in this case, I sewed all the linens together and I pressed the seams open because I wanted that kind of easy movement and I wanted to keep the lightweight feel. Some of the seams I kept just as cut, straight stitched, and then a few of the others I did some pinking, and that doesn't show on this particular sample. And then I threw this into the washing machine, and I wanted to see what the back side was going to be like because I knew that I wanted a lightweight garment. I didn't want to line it with silk or anything else, and I wanted to see what I had to do to protect those seams. Now, linen is famous for fraying, and that is exactly what happened here. And you can see that just about every one of these fabrics frayed. Some of them were a lot worse than others, and even the ones that were pinked, and you can still see some of the little triangles here from the pinking, those all look like a hot mess too, so it's not going to work. In fact, it was such a concern for me that I decided not to do this like this at all, because some of these fabrics were actually fraying quite a bit on the exterior, and if I were to throw something like this into the wash again, these seams would actually fall apart. And you can see here that the seam allowance is basically all just frayed fringe. There's hardly anything holding it together. So I thought about this, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to piece a whole bunch of stuff. And I decided that if I wanted something strong but still a single layer, I would have to serge everything. And I really wasn't too happy about that, but in the end, that is what I did. So let's take a look at the finished tunic. So here we are. This is the front. There's a lot of fabric there. If we open it up and take a look, it's all serged, and I used actually, oh gosh, I don't know what it is. It's like maybe 25 stitches to the inch, something like that. And then I didn't really bother about which way these guys were going to go in terms of to one side or the other. I just let them do pretty much whatever they wanted to do. And then I did sew on some beads, and in that case the stitching is just right into the seam allowance on the back, and I let those seams do whatever they wanted. One thing I did do is I incorporated a few vintage linens. This was a pillowcase that belonged to my grandmother. It has a little bit of embroidery. And then I found a napkin with this little embroidered owl, and I stuck that on there. And then one thing I kind of played around with was some cross stitch here, and so I cross stitched a word in white onto the corner. And then because I didn't line it, the edges were all raw edges, so I decided to just bind the whole thing in a pale gray, very lightweight silk. So that's what I did to keep that kind of springy feel to the garment. It's been through the washing machine a couple of times, and it's doing just fine. I don't have any degradation in any of the fabrics. This was the one that was falling apart in the sample, and on the inside you can see everything looks really good. There's no fraying, no loose threads here. It doesn't look like anything's coming apart. So in this case, the answer to the big problem was serging. The other option that I thought about was stitching all of these seams, pressing everything to one side, and then top stitching on the outside. Now that would have done two things that could have been kind of problematic. First, it still would have had a lot of frayed edges on the inside, and second, it really would have affected how springy and how movable this pieced fabric was going to be. And so I decided not to do that, mainly because of the fraying on the inside. I wanted this to last for a long time. What would I do differently? The one thing I think I would do differently is the silk binding at the top. I think I probably should have used lightweight linen or maybe a cotton for that, because it's, I don't know if the silk is going to really last very long, but it looks pretty, so I like it. In the end, I'm pretty happy with this. I think my version looks just as good as Mr. Jackrabbit's. He looks handsome. I look pretty good when I'm wearing my tunic. I never walk around with him in my arms when I'm wearing it, though. It's a little matchy-matchy, but it was a fun project. I look forward to trying some of my own fashions, human-sized, again in the future, and I'll be sure to let you know when I do that and the things that I had to do to make the project wearable.